Know something is an equation of Taylor-Pavia.
When there's a letter instead of a number.
Not necessarily, because 6 plus 5 equals 11 is an equation. You're right, you could have a letter in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean. What makes something an equation? Caroline?
You add, subtract, multiply, divide.
What makes something an equation though? Keyword equation. Might catch on to the first few letters there on McQuinnichek. Has an equal sign, yeah. If it has an equal sign, it's equation, and you can't solve for things unless you do. But here are our equations. Write this down. D minus 5 equals 3.2. Write down this one. F plus 1/5. F plus 1/5 equals 4/5. And one final one here. Let's make this one 3/5. N equals 1. 3 different types of equations, and I'm going to help you out with them here. The first thing is, let's identify what type of equation it is. Now, the type is based on what mathematical operation you are doing. In other words, what sign do you see here? This is a subtraction problem. This one here is an addition problem. And this one here, there is no sign there, but anytime a number is next to a letter, Kyle, it's
Multiplication.
it is multiplication. Well, this one's. Now, when you see an equation, back in the day when we had just normal numbers like this, sorry. How did we used to do this when you saw this? X minus 7 equals 15. What did I tell you to do to solve that problem? Because we've done that since like probably the 5th day of school or something like that. Phil, what did you say to do?
Think of an easier problem.
Right, think of an easier problem, then figure out the operation you do. For example, 5 minus 2 equals 3. If you're missing this number here, what do you do with those two to get 5? Zach?
You add them.
You add them, and then 3 plus 2 is 5, so this plus this is 22. Well, you can kind of put that on the back burner now, because this is just about as easy and probably much faster there. When you see these equations, I want you to think opposites. Oh, I can get it to right. Okay, and when you write it down, I want you actually to show your opposite, because now that you're almost in 7th grade, soon we'll be rounding up. Okay, the opposite of subtracting is adding. So to solve this for the letter D, what I want you to do is put a plus 5 there. Okay, because when you add 5, does anybody know what happens when you add 5 to a minus 5? What do you suppose you're going to end up with, Josh?
0.
You get nothing, it goes away. But there's a little rule in equation land that says if I take 5 away from this side of an equation, I have to, or if I add 5 to this side, I have to add 5 to this side as well. So when you add 5 to this side, you get 8.2. It's a little like this. We don't take too much time for object lessons here, but it's like this. And unfortunately, my balance doesn't work very well. An equation is this. Does it look like it's balanced? Yeah, without a swing to it. Okay, think about an equation. Oh, that's perfect. Let me take one of these pennies out. Yeah, that ain't too bad. This never works quite right. Think about an equation as like a scale or a balance. That doesn't work very well one of these days. The equal sign is the part right between it. And the deal is with this. When you do something to an equation, like let's say I add 2 pennies to this side, okay, the equation is no longer balanced until you add 2 pennies to the other side. And when you add 2 pennies to the other side, you get back to where the equation was actually it's kind of there, equal there. So the same thing is true when you do it on paper. Okay, if I add 5 to this side, now it's all out of balance because this side is actually heavier. You have to add 5 to that other side and it balances out. So this is your answer, just like with this one here. What type of an equation is it? Addition. What's the opposite of addition? Subtraction. So for me to solve this, I do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So I subtract 1/5. It goes away, but just like on that balance, if I took 1/5 away from something, it's going to make it lighter, it's going to be out of balance until I subtract 1/5 from the other side. We have to do it to both sides. So now, what is it if I take 4/5 minus 1/5?
3/5.
3/5, and that would be your answer. So you don't have to think of an easier problem, just start thinking opposites. Now this last one here, we're not going to get too much into that because it gets a little goofy here, but we talked about this before. If I wrote it like this, would you know what the answer is? 3/5 times what number equals 1? And I think they're always going to give you ones for right now. So what do you suppose the answer is there, Lauren?
5/5.
Exactly, just think of the reciprocal there. I think those are the only kind of multiplication ones they're going to give you there. So anytime you see a fraction with a letter equals to 1, you just think that it's reciprocal.
So kind of it's opposite.
It is kind of its opposite in a strange warped sort of way there. And the other thing